Dear listeners, welcome to History with Herodotus, where we embark on a journey through the annals of time, uncovering the hidden narratives that have shaped our world. Today, we find ourselves in the midst of a pivotal moment in modern history as we delve into the fascinating tale of the Prague Spring. This brief, yet extraordinary period, which took place from January to August 1968, was a culmination of events and ideas that had been simmering for years, waiting to erupt onto the scene. The city's winding alleys, lined with historic buildings such as St. Vitus Cathedral and Charles Bridge, seemed to whisper tales of a bygone era, while the sounds of dissent and debate filled the air. It was here, in the early 1960s, that a group of reform-minded intellectuals and politicians began to advocate for change. One key figure was Alexander Dubček, a Slovak politician who would later become the leader of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia. Dubček, along with others, such as economist Otajik and writer Milan Kundera, formed a loose network of like-minded individuals who sought to introduce reforms and increase democratization within the country. They drew inspiration from the reforms introduced by Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev, who had attempted to decentralize power and increase transparency within the Soviet Union. In 1967, the Czechoslovakian Writers' Union, led by writers such as Václav Havel and Pavel Kohut, issued a statement calling for greater freedom of expression and an end to censorship. This bold move sparked a wave of protests and demands for reform, which resonated throughout the country. The government, sensing the growing unrest, responded with a mixture of repression and token concessions. As we explore the earliest history of the Prague Spring, we find ourselves in the midst of a cultural and intellectual renaissance. The city's famous coffee houses, such as the Café Slavia, became hubs for discussion and debate, where intellectuals and artists gathered to discuss politics, literature, and philosophy. The streets of Prague, once filled with the silence of oppression, now echoed with the sounds of protest and demands for change. The Action Program, adopted by the Communist Party in April 1968, was a groundbreaking document that called for significant changes, including greater press freedom, increased autonomy for Czechoslovakia, and a shift towards a more democratic form of socialism. As the news of these reforms spread, the people of Prague began to sense that something extraordinary was unfolding. The historical context of this era is crucial to understanding the emergence of the Prague Spring. The Soviet Union's grip on Eastern Europe had begun to loosen, and the Czechoslovakian people were eager to assert their independence. The country's economy was stagnant, and the lack of freedom and creativity had stifled innovation and progress. These individuals, who had grown up under communist rule, were eager to challenge the status quo and create a more just and equitable society. As the Action Program was implemented, Czechoslovakia experienced a surge in creative freedom, with writers, artists, and intellectuals embracing the newfound liberties. The country's capital, Prague, became a hotbed of cultural and intellectual activity, with coffeehouses like Café Slavia and Café Union serving as hubs for lively debates and discussions. It was here that influential figures like Václav Havel, Milan Kundera, and Pavel Kohut would gather to share their ideas and inspire others to join the movement. One notable example of the era's creative explosion was the emergence of the Laterna Magica theater group, which pushed the boundaries of experimental art and performance. This innovative collective, led by artists like Alfred Radok and Josef Svoboda, created immersive and avant-garde productions that captivated audiences and helped to define the spirit of the Prague Spring. The press also played a crucial role in this period, as newspapers and magazines began to publish previously taboo topics and criticisms of the government. The Czechoslovakian media, once tightly controlled by the communist authorities, was now free to explore sensitive issues like corruption, economic stagnation, and social inequality. This newfound freedom of expression helped to fuel the growing demand for reform and democratization. As the movement gained momentum, Alexander Dubček, the leader of the Communist Party, found himself at the forefront of the reforms. Dubček's vision for a more democratic and decentralized socialism resonated with many Czechoslovaks who saw him as a champion of their aspirations for freedom and self-determination. His leadership helped to galvanize the movement, inspiring countless individuals to participate in the country's first-ever democratic elections. The Prague Spring also witnessed an unprecedented level of international engagement, as Czechoslovakia began to re-establish ties with Western countries and explore new diplomatic channels. In April 1968, Dubček met with Austrian Chancellor Josef Klaus, marking a significant shift in the country's foreign policy and paving the way for future interactions with the West. The era's emphasis on creativity, freedom, and self-expression created a sense of hope and optimism that would leave a lasting legacy in Czechoslovakian history. As the reforms gained momentum, the Soviet Union grew increasingly concerned about the potential spread of democratic ideals to other Eastern Bloc countries. In August 1968, Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev decided to intervene, citing the need to protect socialism and maintain order in Czechoslovakia. On the night of August 2021, a massive invasion force of over 200,000 Warsaw Pact troops, led by the Soviet Union, crossed into Czechoslovakia. The occupation was met with widespread resistance from the Czechoslovakian people, who took to the streets to protest the invasion. Despite being vastly outnumbered and outgunned, the protesters showed remarkable bravery, using non-violent tactics such as barricades, sit-ins, and demonstrations to express their opposition. The international community also condemned the invasion, with the United Nations General Assembly passing a resolution calling for the immediate withdrawal of Soviet troops. The aftermath of the invasion also saw a significant brain drain, as many of Czechoslovakia's most talented individuals, including writers, artists, and intellectuals, fled the country to escape persecution. This exodus would have long-term consequences for the country's cultural and economic development. In the years following the invasion, Czechoslovakia became increasingly isolated from the West, and its economy stagnated under Soviet domination. The country's people lived in a state of constant fear, as the secret police, known as the CB, monitored their every move. The legacy of the Prague Spring was all but erased, and it would take decades for the Czechoslovakian people to regain their freedom. Thank you for joining me on this journey through history with Herodotus. That's all for today's History with Herodotus. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, remember that to understand the present, we must first understand the past.